I'm actually going to get started with this Khanna story. So, quick shout out to Case Study QB here. We have two clips. The first clip is going to discuss the immigration issue at the border. There's some defense there. And the second clip, we're going to discuss the possibility of Joe Biden running again and some of the statements that Joe Biden made during his 60 Minutes interview. So Khanna during this interview was on Fox News. Yes, he went on to Fox News, and Case Study QB doing what he does best, clipping these for all of us. So thank you so much for that. We really do appreciate your work, Case. But let's hear what Khanna here has to say about the border issue and immigration. You're going to love this one.
All right, let me move on because I want to talk about the border. This is what your colleague Kamala Harris said a week ago and what some of your other Democratic colleagues have said in the time since. Listen here.
The border is secure.
It's wrong. She's dead wrong on that. Does anybody say that our borders are secured? That is not accurate. I've been there.
The border is not secure, without due respect to the VP. We get thousands of people along the border, from 6,000 to 8,000 people a day.
So I know you didn't have the benefit of seeing the monitor, but that was Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Henry Cuellar of Texas, whose district includes El Paso, which is literally drowning in illegal migrants. Where do you come down on what Kamala Harris said? You're from a border state. Is the border secure?
I recognize their voices, Senator Manchin and Representative Cuellar. Look, I think we can do more to secure the border, but what that looks like is comprehensive immigration reform. It's secure, but we can make it securer. I mean,
Okay. See, they caught him off guard here. I want you to listen to what he said, because this is important. Pay attention to what he says and how he tries to switch it up.
6,000 to 8,000 people a day.
So I know you didn't have the benefit of seeing the monitor, but that was Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Henry Cuellar of Texas, whose district includes El Paso, which is literally drowning in illegal migrants. Where do you come down on what Kamala Harris said? You're from a border state. Is the border secure?
So the question is the border secure? Yes or no? And he tries to deflect here, which we've seen a lot of times on this show. We've showed you a lot of times the politicians, they'll do that. When they don't want to say yes or no, they'll deflect. But then the commentator cuts him off and is kind of pushing him to say, no, you need to give me a yes or a no here. There's no deflection on this. Either it's secure or it's not.
Recognize their voices, Senator Manchin and Representative Cuellar. Look, I think we can do more to secure the border, but what that looks like is comprehensive immigration reform. It's secure, but we can make it securer. I mean,
I'm sorry, Congressman. How is it secure when 2.35 million people by the 31st of this month will have come across the border illegally?
Yeah. So either it's secure or it's not secure. So you heard him at first. He said, well, I think there's things we can do to make it more secure. He interrupts him and he says, but is it secure? He said, well, I think we can make it securer. No, like, I don't know, if it was secure, people wouldn't be coming through. People wouldn't be coming through. And this is just a yes or no question. Now, how should he have answered that question? I don't know. Maybe just say, well, currently it is not secure, but we are working on our ways to make it fully secure. But he deflected. That was a yes or no question. And the thing is, him and Kamala Harris, they know the border is not secure. If it was secure, people wouldn't be coming through. Let's go on. There's more to this conversation.
Well, there are more border agents down there, in my view, by the numbers than were even there under President Obama or President Bush. But why is it not secure? Let's have an honest conversation. One of the reasons is you have employers here saying, come.
So I hope you just caught that. So again, he said it was secure, but you can make it more secure. But listen to what he says here.
5 million people by the 31st of this month will have come across the border illegally.
Well, there are more border agents down there, in my view, by the numbers than were even there under President Obama or President Bush. So, but why is it not secure? Let's have an honest.
He just said, why is it not secure? So it's not secure. So which is it? Did you guys catch that? I wonder if other people caught that when they watched this clip. So he admits to you right there, why is it not secure? He's admitting it is not secure, which again contradicts Kamala Harris's statement. And she was asked that question twice during that interview.
Conversation. One of the reasons is you have employers here saying, come work for us. People are trying to come across the border. They're coming without the paperwork, and many of them want to go back, but there's no process. And this is why we had a gang of hate. We had comprehensive immigration reform. We said people who want to come here to work and go back, there should be a process. That was President George W. Bush's proposal, and we can have increased technology and security at the border. There was a bipartisan deal. If we really want to solve the problem, why not do that? And there are many of us who are willing to work to do that instead of just yelling at each other, which doesn't solve the problem, and it gets worse and worse every year.
So what happened to the plan that George W. Bush had? Why was that not implemented? That was a Republican president. Why was that not implemented? And you always have to come back with, why are they coming here to begin with? And George, I like your comment here. He knocks it out of the park. Don't like massive illegal immigration. Knock it off with sanctions. Knock it off with the coups. Knock it off with interference. Knock it off with the drug war. There you go. There's a reason why they are coming here. Barbara says there's no such word as secure. I don't know, man.
Was on last hour, basically asking a question, where is Vice President Kamala Harris? I mean, she was appointed the border czar. We haven't seen her at the border. We haven't seen a whole lot of communications on the border. And she's giving interviews, most recently last weekend, saying that the border is secure. You've got this major influx of migrants pouring over our border to the point where you've got governors of American states trying to figure out what to do with them.
Well, first of all, what they did to migrants, whatever your view on the border and shipping them somewhere, I just think that was wrong. And I hope people can agree that that's wrong. Regardless, look, we're a nation that believes every person is endowed by their creator with dignity. And whatever you think on the border, we ought to treat every person with some dignity. I just think that's who we are as Americans. And what I disagreed with Governor DeSantis.
So Ro Khanna just said that we need to treat every person with some dignity. I agree. But if Ro Khanna believes that, then why do we still have kids in cages at the border? Putting kids in cages is not my idea of treating people with dignity. And let's just be real here. They were in cages under Obama. He was the one who put them there. Just a reminder for the people who are upset. He was the one who put them there. Kids were in cages under Trump. And now we have another Democrat president and kids are still in cages. So we're not treating them with dignity either. Do you see what I mean? When it comes to Democrat, Republican, there are certain issues where it just seems like regardless who the party is that is in charge, the issue doesn't really improve. Immigration is one of those examples. You have kids in cages under a Republican president, under a Democrat president. You have someone like Governor DeSantis sending migrants from Florida to other places like Martha Vineyard to outside Kamala Harris's home. We know this was a political stunt. He's trying to flex his political muscle and power here. But regardless of the party that is in the White House at that time, whether it's Republican or Democrat, immigration has not been resolved. It has not been fixed in this country. So it's still a problem. Still a problem.
By doing that is forget the border dispute. Just treat people with dignity when they're in America, whether they stay in America or not. But I agree that we have a challenge at the border, and the challenge is hurting those of us who care about a humanitarian policy.
The question was Kamala Harris. Do you think she's doing a good job with the border?
I think we need a better solution on comprehensive immigration reform. And so what I would say to the vice president is help lead to get comprehensive immigration reform done. There is a framework that President George W. Bush did. He was a border state governor. He had a proposal back in the early 2000s. I think if we could just do that, and by the way, the House has passed a proposal that would allow people to come here as guest workers and then go back. It's not even path to citizenship. Why can't we at least do things like that that would reduce the tension? You know, I understand the ranchers on the border. I understand people are coming over, they're destroying the property. In many cases, they're unsafe. I'm sympathetic to that. I understand that.
So to answer that question that she just asked him, is Kamala Harris doing a good job in reference to the border? He's given a nice little speech there. The answer to that question is no. That's a long way of saying no. We can look at it again. I think it's about here.
Major influx of migrants pouring over our border to the point where you've got governors of American states trying to figure out what to do with them.
Well, first of all, what they did to migrants, whatever your view on the border and shipping them somewhere, I just think that was wrong. And I hope people can agree that that's wrong. Regardless, look, we're a nation that believes every person is endowed by their creator with dignity. And whatever you think on the border, we ought to treat every person with some dignity. I just think that's who we are as Americans. And what I disagreed with Governor DeSantis by doing that is forget the border dispute. Just treat people with dignity when they're in America, whether they stay in America or not. But I agree that we have a challenge at the border. And the challenge is hurting those of us who care about a humanitarian policy.
But the question was Kamala Harris. Do you think she's doing a good job with the border?
That's the question.
I think we need a better solution on comprehensive immigration reform. And so
that's a no. That's a no.
I would say to the vice president is help lead to get comprehensive immigration reform done. There is a framework that President George W. Bush did. He was a border state governor. He had a proposal back in the early 2000s. I think if we could just do that, and by the way, the House has passed a proposal that would allow people to come here as guest workers and then go back. It's not even path to citizenship. Why can't we at least do things like that that would...
You want them to come here as guest workers and then go back? Let me get this straight, Ro. You want immigrants to come into the United States, do our dirty work for us so you can pay them very little. They will be paid very little compared to other people in this country. And then send them back home. That's what you want? Do you think they come here as a guest worker? Do you think they're going to want to go back home, though? They're coming here because they want to live here. How many people are going to sign up for that? You really think they're going to be on board for that? What? Let me just come here so we can use your labor and then we'll send you back. I'm confused. So you're just going to use them?
Reduce the tension. You know, I understand the ranchers on the border. I understand people are coming over. They're destroying the property. In many cases, they're unsafe. I'm sympathetic to that. I understand that. That has to be fixed. At the same time, many of these ranchers want people to hire. So how do we fix this? Well, there's a guest worker program that would solve a lot of it. It wasn't my idea. It wasn't a Democratic idea. It was a Republican president, President George W. Bush. I'm saying let's just pass that and we can take a step forward.
But why do you have to send them back home after they've done the labor, Khanna? I know, JB, destroying the property. Why do you have to send them back home after they've done the labor? That's just exploitation. This is capitalism at its finest.
Congressman, I want to move on to the 2024 election, but just one final button that if we can put on this very quickly.
Sure.
So maybe he's not sending them to Martha's Vineyard, and that was obviously an attention-getting act on the part of Ron DeSantis. But Oscar Leeser, who is the Democratic mayor of El Paso, is busing illegal migrants to New York City saying, we're full, we can't handle this anymore, and yet nobody is saying anything in criticism to that. But they're
See, but this is what I just said. It's not one party that's doing it. Both Democrats and Republicans have not figured out how to solve this issue. Both. So you got Democrats doing it too.
They're criticizing DeSantis. They're criticizing Ducey. They're criticizing Abbott.
Well, I think what was criticizing DeSantis was it looked like there was trying to make a political point out of it, and there are many
Clearly
other ways
he
he can
was.
make. And there are very many other ways he can make a political point. I just don't think you should do it at the expense of people who are vulnerable, even Republicans, even people on the right who disagree with my policy.
So is Ro Khanna okay with the Democrat governor doing the same thing? So he's okay with the Democrat governor doing it because he felt like he's not trying to make a political point. He's against Ron DeSantis doing it because he felt like he was trying to make a political point. Both of them are sending the migrants to other states, though. They're both doing the same thing. This is the problem with the two-party system. Do you see how easy it is when you belong to a party to defend your party's actions because it's your party? This is another look. We're going to make the case for this one day. This is another example that you can point to make the case for a third-party movement. This is another example that you can point to because he just admitted it. He just admitted it. And on Fox News of all places.
On the border don't believe that you should be manipulating people, but I agree that's a problem. We have to solve it, and the way to do it is comprehensive immigration reform.
Ro Khanna. Case Study QB's in the house. Thanks for the shout out as usual, Sabs. Greatly appreciate it. Welcome, Case. Welcome. I don't know what to say, but there's another clip because this is a longer interview and there's another clip we're going to go to as well. But I do want to get to these comments here first. Terry says the Hispanics will be the new voters, so Democrats don't depend on the black vote. I think this can be a common misconception because the idea or the assumption is that Hispanics who are moving here are going to automatically vote Democrat. What about those that vote Republican? Just something to think about. Delthea Simmons says people come here from undeveloped countries. Who underdeveloped them? Again, rich white guys are responsible for that underdevelopment and they should be locked up. Yasmin says they're passing the migrants like they're hot potatoes. Get these people help. Mark, Sabby, if the railroad strike fails, should that be signal for a general strike? I would really like to see the railroad strike combined with the truckers, combined with the port workers on the West Coast, because they are under duress there. I would like to see all three of those groups get together. If that were to happen, boom, that's your general strike. That's your general strike right there. But we would need at least one of the transportation fields to be on board with it, because as long as the goods are still getting through, it's going to be hard to have a general strike. Now, there's another clip that I want to go to as well from this interview that Ro Khanna had. And shout out to Case Study QB for this clip as well. Now, this clip is in reference to Biden possibly running again and some of the comments that he made on that 60 Minutes interview, which I told you guys I thought was pretty cringe. Let's get to it.
Okay, so on to 2024. President Biden said yesterday he's not sure whether he's going to run for re-election in 2024. Would you encourage him to?
He has to make that decision, but I believe that he is convinced that he is the best person to beat Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is going to be the nominee of the Republican Party. Every poll I've said shows that he still has a tremendous amount of support, especially among working class Republicans. And so then the question is, who can beat Donald Trump on our side? President Biden has beaten him once. He has the right to make that determination. I believe he is going to run, but it's his decision to make if he still is the best person to beat him.
All right.
In other words, I'll say what Ro Khanna would not say, and that's, no, I'm not going to encourage him. The question was, would you encourage him to run? He kind of just threw the ball back in the court and said, I think it's up to him to make that decision. But would you encourage him? So that was a no. Let's go on.
Well, he's raising some eyebrows with some of the things he said in this brand new interview over the weekend, 60 Minutes. This specifically on the pandemic. Interesting timing. Listen.
The pandemic is over. We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it. But the pandemic is over.
So are those in his party, all of them, going to get the memo? Are they going to end the mandates and the restrictions that are still happening in many states?
I think what the president was trying to say is that the worst of the pandemic is over. Look, when you give a lot of interviews.
Here he comes defending Joe Biden. So he tried to defend Kamala Harris in the other clip, and now he's trying to defend Joe Biden in this clip. And it's always, oh, I think what Joe Biden meant to say, I think what the president really meant was this. No, like when people are giving these speeches, when they're giving these interviews, we don't know what you mean. We know what you say. And it always takes someone like a Khanna or Kamala Harris or a Pramila Jayapal to come in and rescue them and tell you what they really meant, even though that's not what they said. Here we go. Defense number 2.
And every word is dissected, as I know, and probably my Twitter feed after this will have
a lot of interviews might be a stretch, considering we haven't seen the president sit down for an interview.
He gave one.
He's out there, but look, obviously there's still long COVID. There's still people who are vulnerable, who have issues. I just got my booster shot for Omicron. I don't think we can be complacent about it. But what he was trying to say is life is largely returned to normal.
He said the pandemic is over.
That was pretty.
The way I would phrase it is that the worst of the pandemic is over. That's how I would phrase it, and that is my view of what the president's intention was. Obviously.
But how do you know what the president's intention was? Did he tell you? Did he reach out to you, Ro, and say, well, Ro, you know what I really meant was this? Is that what he meant to say? Why isn't Joe Biden speaking for himself? If he made a mistake with what he said, why isn't Joe Biden the one coming forward on Fox News or whatever network you want to be on? Why isn't Joe Biden the one coming forward saying, oh, yes, I know I said that in that 60 Minutes interview, but what I meant was this? Why is it always everybody else speaking for him instead of him speaking for himself? Just a question.
He's entitled to his expression, but I think they've done a tremendous job to get a lot of people vaccinated. And why can't we come together in this country? Why can't we just say, look, President Trump and his team helped develop some of those vaccines, and President Biden helped distribute them, and this is actually a success of America, and let's put the partisan politics aside and give credit to people on both administrations who helped develop.
Why can't we come together? We can't come together because the two-party system keeps us divided. That's why. It's been that way for a long time. He said, get past partisan politics, but this is what we are under. We are under a duopoly of partisan politics. This is why we can't come together. What we should be focusing on is the class issue, the class divide that we have in this country, and fighting it back against the oligarchs who are oppressing the majority of us in this country. But we can't do that because people are blinded by what the right is saying and what the left is saying. And you have networks like Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC who continue to push that divide. And you have politicians that continue to push that divide, that fear monger that tell people that, well, you better vote for this person or otherwise you're going to get that one. That's why we can't come together. When is the last time you've seen these politicians actually working together, so to speak? They said Joe Biden would be the one who could work across the aisle. I don't see him crossing any aisles. I don't see Joe Biden doing that much walking at all, to be honest. And I don't see him doing a lot of interviews either. That 60-minute interview that he just did, when was the last time he did an interview before that? So let's be real here. You guys created this system. You guys are the one that pushed this partisan politics. And now you want to come forward and say, why can't we all just come together? After what we went through in 2020, watching you guys bicker and fight over each other, after the speech that Joe Biden just gave in Philadelphia, where he basically called out all the MAGA supporters and basically said that they are a threat to this country. But now you want to come and you want to tell us, why don't we all just come together? How can we come together when people like you, Khanna, when people like Joe Biden, when people like Donald Trump, when people like Nancy Pelosi, when people like AOC, when people like Chuck Schumer, when people like Lindsey Graham are constantly keeping us divided over partisan politics? How?
Question. I think it's a fair question.
Wouldn't that be nice?
And wouldn't that be nice? And do you think that this president has followed through on his promise to best effort unite this country?
We're trying. Look, I forget the blame for a second. I am concerned about China in the 21st century. I'm concerned as a son of immigrants. My parents came here and they said, Ro, you were born an American. You won the lottery. This is the greatest country in the world. And I want to make sure for my kids and for the future, we are the greatest country. And putting aside politics, I really think whatever we can do to come on. That's why I get criticized for coming on Fox News. And I say, well, how are we going to start to talk to each other? And so do I think we can do more to bring this country together? Of course. But we all have to start trying.
Well,
Ro, you go on Fox News because you're planning on running for president, I believe, at some point. Let's keep it real. But I want you to listen to what he said here about blame, because then he contradicts himself right after.
Both administrations who helped develop the vaccines.
Wouldn't that be nice?
And wouldn't that be nice? And do you think that this president has followed through on his promise to best effort unite this country?
We're trying. Look, I forget the blame for a second. I am concerned about China in the 21st century. I'm concerned.
He said, forget the blame for a second. I'm concerned about China. So forget the blame, but blame China? Really? Forget the blame.
As a son of immigrants, my parents came here and they said, Ro, you were born an American, you won the lottery, this is the greatest country in the world. And I want to make sure for my kids and for the future, we are the greatest country. And putting aside politics, I really think whatever we can do to come on. That's why I get criticized for coming on Fox News. And I say, well, how are we going to start to talk to each other? And so do I think we can do more to bring this country together? Of course. But we all have to start trying.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you and your colleague Debbie Dingell are willing to weather the slings and arrows from your own party to join us on
From
Fox.
Scary
We do
Us.
appreciate it.
I appreciate your letting me on.
It's a good note to end on. We do appreciate you joining us, Congressman. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll see you again soon. All right.
Thank you.
You know, it's like they contradict their own statements, like during these interviews. Forget the blame for a second. I'm concerned about China. Black Uni Griffin, the greatest country that started torturing all over again. Well. Khanna's going to run, watch. May not be 2024, but maybe 2028, watch. He's going to run for president. Mark my words. Let me go to some of the comments here. Socialist MMA, Nick is in the house. Sabby on fire as always. Thanks, Nick. Scott, Khanna has never been the guy he says he is. He is nothing but a public fraud. Yikes, Scott. JB says, like Obama said in regards to running, Joe, you don't have to do that. Remember that, you guys?